Thank you, Kelly. Brian Williams and I have one thing in common tonight. I don't think it's our birthday. And that is that we each have the opportunity to speak about an honoree who happens to be our supervisor. So let's see who does the better job of managing us tonight. A few weeks ago, where I work as general manager, the news department produced a story about funeral homes. And one of our advertisers, a funeral director, took great issue with the approach in the story. And so the local sales manager and I hopped in our car and we went over to meet and placate the mortician. So I related the story a few days later to my supervisor. I mentioned the incident and she said, "Jeff, I know that you told him that journalists make the news decisions and that advertising is completely separate." Well, the truth is, I had not been that firm with our advertiser. I had bent over a little too far backwards, and I had thrown the reporter slightly under the bus. I was properly chagrined by Marci's comment. I told the reporter about the incident. I apologized to her. And I relearned a lesson from a long time ago, and that is that you can lead for-profit media groups and still be fierce advocates for the First Amendment rights of reporters. That is why Marci Burdick is where she is today, Senior Vice President of Shores Communication, Chair of the NAB Television Board, and many other things. As the chair of this organization, she was one of, a few years ago, she was one of the strongest advocates for a free press and for proper recognition for the man who made the famous speech, the most famous speech perhaps in broadcast journalism history, at an RTDNF convention in the late 50s. It was on her watch as chair that a postage stamp dedicated to Edward R. Murrow was unveiled some 30 years later at the Miami Beach Convention. And Marci, here is one of those stamps for your desk. In her service as an industry leader on the RTNDA, NAB, and NBC boards, she has had only two purposes. One is to protect the First Amendment rights of journalists to tell and the public to receive the news. The other is to protect free over-the-air broadcasting as the linchpin of democracy that we who are in that business believe it is. As a news director, she has trained so many who went on to great careers on and off the air. She has at all times guided her news teams to outstanding reporting, service to the community, and high ethical standards. She has the astounding ability to teach without flaunting her knowledge, to encourage without sounding phony, to speak directly without speaking hurtfully, and to support without seeming to be correcting. In the 20-plus years that I have known her, I have not met a person who has had anything other than a high opinion of Marci for her drive, for her knowledge, for her sensitivity, for her experience, and for her compassion. Oh, and I should add to that, her unstinting dedication to the free and unfettered practice of journalism. The story goes, I am told, that one day a couple of decades ago, I apparently said, "Marci, someday you'll work for me." There are several of my employees who are here tonight who will probably say that she is lucky that that never happened. But it has been my excellent fortune and that of numerous of her friends in this room that we have had the opportunity to work for her and with her.
Good day from KY3 News. She is a beacon for the First Amendment and the roles that television stations play, not just in Shores, but across the industry.
Her example is stellar, and it tends to be infectious, and it keeps the broadcast family on the same page.
Intelligence, of course. Inspiration, no doubt. But with Marci Burdick and true leadership, it's always about integrity.
Every employee in our broadcasting division knows Marci's done that job, and she helps them.
I can more easily tell you what I'm not good at than what I am good at. my whole life is a happy accident. Here's how dumb I was. I thought, well, the news is only on a half an hour a day, so I'll have to work like maybe 2 hours a day, and I go, gosh. Good evening, everyone. As you know by now, the B-1 bomber has officially arrived at Ellsworth Air Force Base. I always wanted to have a job that made some kind of a difference, and I could see quickly that being a journalist is a way to serve your community and make a difference that mattered.
There is no better advocate for local journalism in our industry than Marci. Integrity and sort of a Midwestern sensibility on how to get things done and get things done without a lot of, shall we say, baggage.
She knows that news is really at the centerpiece of localism and that local connection to a community, which makes her very much an example of how broadcasters are public servants every day.
It's not important that anybody knows my name, where is the need, where can we not only help report it, but how can we help solve the problems, and we do both.
We appreciate your support, thank you.
We couldn't have a better media partner than WSBT, and especially for them to let us use their facility too. It doesn't happen very often.
We have to do something that's different, we have to do something that's deeper, and we have to do something that's meaningful to the people who we serve through the local news we provide. There have been a lot of moments in my life where I thought, I can't really believe I'm doing this. You know, one night when I was seated next to Walter Cronkite at a dinner, and I thought, I can't believe I'm talking to Walter Cronkite.
Absolutely.
She's sort of the gold standard.
On behalf of our family and our company, I want to thank RTDNF for honoring Marci with this award. She has been a great credit to not only our company, but to the industry, and we are delighted that she's receiving this recognition.
Please join me in congratulating Marci for 2012 recipient of the First Amendment Civil.
Thank you very much. You got anything in your pocket for him? Jeff, thank you very much. My colleagues at KYTV for that very nice video. They had trouble with it because, as they were told by people who used to work for me, videotape degrades after 15 years and not much exists for television days. It's a real honor for me to be here on the dais with the three other people who were here tonight. Great joy to meet Martha Raddatz tonight, who I have admired as a viewer for her insight, her courage, and most of all, her class. Jim Bohannon, who I got to know because, as you heard, he came from Lebanon, Missouri. I worked in Springfield, Missouri for a lot of years, and one thing Jim never forgot is where he came from, and always made an effort to reach out to the journalists in his hometown. And Jim, listening to your show every night is like a master class in interviewing. Thank you for your work. And Steve Kappas, the man who NBC affiliates, and we have 3, mentioned in their prayers every night, and it goes something like, Steve Kappas, it's absolutely true. When I ran for RTNBA chairman, those were the days of robust conventions and convention speeches. We actually gave convention speeches. And at the time, I told a story about my youngest child. And with apologies to those of you who were there nearly 20 years ago, I'd like to retell that story tonight. And it was about my daughter, who was then just about 3 years old, and she had older siblings and hated to go to bed at night and going to bed before them. And one night I said, Kristen, it's time to come in from the playground. And she said, and near as I can remember, this is a near quote, she said, I'm not coming in, you dummy head. Now, as pleased as I always was with her articulateness, that was not a word I knew she knew. And I said, Kristen, you have to go to your room because we don't speak that way in our house. She came out a few minutes later, apologetic, and said, I'll never say that word again, Mom. Well, a few minutes later, I said, well, it's time for a bath. And she was also smart enough to realize that was the second warning sign that bedtime was approaching, and we went through the same thing. And her little cheeks got red, and she balled her little fists, and she said, I'm not taking a bath, you stupid head. Different word. I said, we don't speak that way in our house, and off you go to our room for a longer period of time. But she did, came out apologetic, and a little while later I said, all right, it's time to go to bed. And we went through the same thing with the fists and the cheeks and the gritted teeth. And so I said, Kristen Lee Burdick, before you open your mouth, you may want to think about what happened to you the last 2 times you did. And she took this big cleansing breath, and I was probably starting to ponder where you could enter the Mother of the Year competition, because I thought I had diffused the situation. And she looked at me, and I swear to God to you that this is true. She said, I'm not going to bed, you newscaster head. I think I tried to wax eloquently about societal's link of dummy head, stupid head, and newscaster head. I tell you the story tonight because I consider it my great good fortune to have spent most of my career working with the un-newscaster heads. People who are in this business for the right reason. Their focus is one of serving their communities and telling the stories of people who live there and the issues that face them. The First Amendment Service Award, as honored as I am to receive it, is really reflective of the work being done at our stations. And I thought about that a little bit, the kind of work that was being done. Things like the story of the alarming suicide rate in Alaska, told through the story of a distance runner from Kenya who took himself out into the cold to die and lost both his legs, but is rebuilding his life and teaching young people about depression and suicide avoidance. The stories in Kansas of shoddy pediatric dental practices and fraudulent billing that resulted in the shutdown of some of those clinics. Situations like Virginia Tech, where Jeff's station, WDBJ, was the first on for hours and hours and hours, and was the only link often for people wondering what was happening that horrible day on campus. It's the letters that I read from stations sent to stations like KYTV, whether it's the Joplin tornadoes or the Branson tornadoes, saying, I first got the text alert in the middle of the night, and then I turned on the computer and you were there with live radar, and then I turned on the television and you were the only one on the air. You saved my life. Or the homeless shelter director who said, I called your radio station in Rapid City because we didn't have socks, and you were there and helped us fill the need. So to my colleagues at KYTV, many of you who are here tonight, I am proud of the work you do, building from radio and television into this robust world of multiple screens and instant communication to serve in more ways and more people than ever before. Last year, at the First Amendment Service Award here in Washington, D.C., I couldn't be with you because I was on vacation in Hawaii, which some of you wasn't coming back from Hawaii. That First Amendment Service Award dinner was 1 year and 4 days ago, exactly. And I remember that not only because I couldn't be here because I was on vacation, but because it was the night that, as many of you were sitting in this room, a massive earthquake was taking place off the coast of Japan, creating a lethal tsunami, the effects that we know now too well. What was unknown in those overnight hours is how high those deadly waters would rise and how far they would travel. As RTDNA honored David Barrett and Susanna of Hearst and Susanna Schuler of Raycom, among others, I sat in an evacuation shelter in Hawaii and watched 10 hours of wall-to-wall coverage on their stations, the Hearst and Raycom stations in Hawaii. I saw coverage that was inspiring, responsible, measured, thorough, and complete. Often here in Washington, D.C., the worst of the worst in broadcast journalism, those stories become legend. And what occurs after regulates to the exception and not the rule. And it is the coverage like those stations provided a year ago, and our stations provide every day, that should not be overlooked. On this dais tonight, I consider myself the representative of local television. I am thankful to accept the First Amendment Service Award in honor of those men and women who do this work every day. Thank you very much.